But for anyone wondering how the tax system works or how much money I pay, or whoever hopes to be in a position one day,
there's some services the market just won't provide, some protections it won't guarantee. No one likes paying taxes, but we do like what they do for us.
Taxes. Once upon a time when we were younger, our parents talked to us about how one day we were going to have to pay for them. Every good, contributing member of society pays a particular amount of taxes during a given time frame. Now, there are different types of taxes, and the one you're most familiar with is probably the tax that you pay on top of your income.
The topic of taxes is something that is so important for you to understand.
However, did you know that even when you're not working, you're paying for taxes as well? No, really. If you've bought something at your local supermarket, chances are you've paid for some taxes too. Take a look at your stacks of receipts right now and check on the breakdown of the amount you paid. You'd be able to see the amount you paid for taxes, and you'll see that it actually makes up quite a bit of the total bill. It also works that way when you go to the restaurants, the movies, bookstores, and lots of other shops. But wait, have you ever wondered why you have to pay taxes at all? And where do all of your taxes go? That's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the business of taxation. This is Business Explained. To learn more about all things money, get educated about how to do business, become business savvy, and enjoy more videos like these, subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell, and may you be granted with many sweet returns. So, taxes. Before we dive any deeper, let's talk about what taxes are. Taxes are fees that are imposed on both companies and individuals by the government. Almost every single country in the world imposes taxes, and when the government collects taxes, they distribute it and use it to cover all of the government's expenditures. But wait, how did taxes come to be? Did someone just randomly wake up one day and say, hey, let's start taking money from the citizens and use it to pay off for stuff in the country? Let's take a look at the history of taxation. Now, taxation has a pretty long history. It did not really play a major role during ancient times, but they existed. Ancient Greeks and Romans had consumption taxes, or taxes for goods and services used in households. There were also taxes applied on imported products, properties, and real estate transactions. However, the taxes on property were primarily applied during times of war when there was need to raise funds for wartime efforts. During the time of Julius Caesar, a general sales tax of 1% called a centesima rurum venalium was imposed on Roman citizens. Rome also had an inheritance tax of 5%, but the immediate family of the deceased was exempt from paying the taxes. During the Middle Ages, taxes took the form of services and gifts. Taxes were imposed on goods that had to travel through particular regions and market taxes. Certain foods and drinks also had taxes. It was during this era that income taxes came in, consisting of head taxes for the poor and every so often crude income taxes for the rich. Over the course of history, taxes have become the center of tons of political controversy and resistance and have been heavily influenced by wars. For example, during the French Revolution of 1789, unfair distribution of taxes was deemed as one of the main causes. The people refused to pay taxes in response to an unjust monarchy and set out to uproot from power those who took the place of the previous one. Another more recent example is a tax strike of restaurants of the Marche region of Italy. As you may probably already know, a lot of businesses all over the world suffered during the coronavirus pandemic. The food and beverage industry was one of the hardest hit, with restaurants forced to close down due to mandated lockdowns across the globe. Lucio Pompelli, the strike organizer, explained their reason for not paying their taxes. "We are going on a tax strike because we can't pay because our businesses are closed forcibly." Modern taxes are now paid using money, not goods, and civil servants are tasked to assess and collect taxes from the citizens. Now, there are also many different types of taxes. Let's talk about the three umbrella categories they fall under. First off, we have income taxes, or the percentage of an individual's income that goes back into the state's funds. The amount an individual pays is dependent on the amount of money they're earning. So, say you're earning something like $1 million a year and the income tax in your region and tax bracket is 10%. That means you will be taxed $100,000 for your $1 million income. The percentage income tax applied and the system of deduction also varies what country you live in. Some countries take more than others, while some don't take away any at all. What? That's impossible. Yeah, keep watching to find out what I'm talking about. Next, we have taxes on property. These are the taxes imposed on real estate value and personal property. Generally, homeowners pay for their property taxes on an annual or monthly basis as part of their mortgage payments. Third, we have sales taxes. These are the taxes imposed on retail sales. The rates on different kinds of commodities vary. For example, the rate of tax for a pair of shoes could greatly differ from the tax placed on your recent restaurant meal. Remember what I said during the first part of the video on taxes for things like going to the movies or buying a book? That's where sales taxes come in. So what does the government spend on? Let's talk about a few examples. First up, the government uses taxes to fund the salaries of both the police and the military. The tax set aside for the police and military is also used to fund their training and their equipment. Our taxes also go to funding things like road construction, railways, waterways, airports, public parks, and other sites of infrastructure.
Whether or not you agree with the tax system, this is how it works, and this is how it's meant to be followed.
So, the next time you see a section of the highway being repaired, consider it a good thing. That's your taxes at work. Public schools and public school teachers are also funded by our taxes, which helps kids get the education that they need. Taxes also go towards social welfare. Sometimes people do not have enough money to provide for them and their family's basic needs, so the government uses our taxes to fund social welfare programs that would help them afford necessities. Programs for senior citizens and healthcare initiatives also take their funding from our taxes. Now, ideally, all of our taxes should go back to funding the things I just mentioned. However, as we've discussed, taxes can be quite controversial, especially when they don't go back to the public like they're supposed to. Let's dive in. No country or government official is completely immune from corruption. We've heard multiple stories of public officials taking positions in office for private gain. And unfortunately, tax is one of the things that is heavily impacted by corruption. While the money stolen indeed does go to waste, it has a much greater cost in society as the money that could be making life better for the citizens suddenly goes missing. In a study done in 2019 by the International Monetary Fund, it was found that countries that were more corrupt did not get to collect as much taxes as countries that were not corrupt. The Fiscal Monitor was able to find that education and healthcare are two of the fields that are heavily affected by corruption, as not much of the national budget is allotted for them. They were also able to find that students from less corrupt countries scored higher in tests than students from highly corrupt countries. According to the International Monetary Fund, the least corrupt nations are able to collect as much as 4% more of GDP in tax revenues compared to countries with more corrupt governments. What does that tell us? Well, for starters, it tells us that less corrupt governments have more money to go around, to put to good use for their public. Also, it tells us that their public is more likely to trust them in handling their taxes properly. An example of this is the nation of Georgia. Georgia was able to significantly reduce corruption in the nation, and as a result, their tax revenue shot up by more than double. Their GDP was able to rise by 13%. Another example is Rwanda. The nation has been implementing strict reforms to combat corruption, and their GDP was able to rise by 6%. Growing economically has a lot to do with how taxes are used. Less corrupt countries are able to efficiently and effectively invest their money. Amazing what having good, honest public officials can do, right? However, that's not to say that private individuals are impervious to corruption or to committing tax fraud. Oh no, there have been loads of cases of people skipping over the law to protect their wealth, which sometimes turns out to be ill-gotten. There's such a thing as tax fraud, or when people alter their tax declarations to avoid paying the full amount, and tax evasion, or when people try to get out of paying their taxes. Perhaps one of the most notorious criminals in history is Al Capone. Capone has been associated with illegal acts like murder, prostitution, money laundering, and bootlegging, but he was only ever convicted for one illegal act, tax evasion. During Capone's time as a mob boss, he was able to earn at least $100 million per year, and because lawful was not part of the wording for paying taxes, even income that came from illegal activities is subject to tax. Capone had two choices. file his taxes properly, which would have essentially meant that he was admitting to his crimes, or evade taxes for as long as he could. Of course, he chose the latter. When he was convicted, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison and had to pay fines and an outstanding tax amount on top of that. Imagine, years and years of crime and you only get jailed for a technicality. Crazy. Now remember what I said earlier on in the video about some countries not implementing income taxes? Well, it's true. Four of the most popular countries without income taxes are the Bahamas, Monaco, Andorra, and the United Arab Emirates. And you know, they're pretty great places to live in. So how are they able to provide their citizens with such a high quality of living if they don't take any income tax? Well, that's a story for another day. So, are taxes a good thing for the economy? What do you think about taxation? Let's talk about it in the comments section below, and I'll respond to all of you who comment within the first hour.
No matter how much money you make, what's really important is how much of that you get to keep.
If you enjoyed this video, you should definitely check out my other video on the wild economy and businesses of the UAE explained. Nestled between the Middle East and Southwest Asia lies the most diversified economy in the Gulf Cooperation Council, the United Arab Emirates. It has the second largest economy in the Middle East right after Saudi Arabia, and it is extremely reliant on one particular commodity. Curious to know what that is? That's exactly what I'm going to be talking to you about in the next video. Today, we're going to dive deep into the wild economy and the business of the United Arab Emirates. So just sit back and relax as I tell you how this state grew economically to be the powerhouse it is today. Stay tuned, stay educated.